Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the OFFM's Jail Technical Assistance Learning event. Today we have a special program designed for you. It's called the Jail Modernization Task Force Findings and Recommendation. And before we get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Ruckelhaus Center. The William D. Ruckelhaus Center is an impartial resource for collaborative problem solving in the state of Washington and the Pacific Northwest. The center is dedicated to assisting public, private, nonprofit, tribal, and other community leaders in their efforts to build consensus and resolve conflicts around difficult public policy issues. The center is a joint effort of the University of Washington, hosted by the Daniel J. Evans School of Public Policy and Governance, and the Washington State University, hosted and administered by the Office of the Provost. Okay, and we have two speakers today. We have Associate Facilitator Melissa Gerbach, and we also have Executive Director Julie Carboni, and she's going to start off our presentation today. So with that, Julie, take it away.
Thanks, and it's actually Julia. So I'm Julia Carboni. I'm the Executive Director of the William D. Ruckelhaus Center. We've already kind of heard what the center is about, so I won't spend a ton of time on that. Melissa, will you advance to the next slide? And to the next one too. Just a little bit more about the center to provide some context. We were started by Bill Ruckelhaus, or at his idea to bring the two universities together. Melissa, can you flip to the, yeah. And so Bill Ruckelhaus was the first director of the EPA under President Nixon, and then again under President Reagan. He really believed in the value of collaborative solutions to be durable. And so the work that we do is really about bringing folks together, decision makers in particular, but to make recommendations, to help write policy that will be durable and that involves a myriad of interests. We are nonpartisan and we work with lots of different entities. Really excited to be presenting on the jail modernization project, and I'm going to hand it off to Melissa to tell you more about the project because she was a lead on this project.
Hello. So we will just start with a project timeline. So in 2023, the legislator directed the center to establish the Jail Modernization Task Force, and the proviso language was around identifying existing facilities that are in need of upgrades or remodel, any need for building new facilities, potential funding sources and mechanisms to make those recommendations feasible, along with a whole host of other topics, including retention issues, employee retention issues, impact of overtime, jail atmosphere, all sorts of different issues with behavioral health and mental health access, as well as reentry and diversion. So truly a whole host of different topics. In April 2024, the center started with what we normally do, which is called a situation assessment. And we go to each individual who has been identified or appointed to be on the task force, and we have a one-on-one discussion with them to be able to understand their perspectives and what they might want to be getting out of this task force. End of October, we had our first meeting, and we met all throughout 2025 with our final report being submitted to the legislature in December. One thing that we really noticed throughout this process is that there is a larger divide in between rural and urban jails instead of Western versus Eastern jails. There are a lot of rural jails in Eastern Washington that are actually in not quite great shape. And the same thing with urban jails on the east side of the state. We were eventually, through this process, we also boiled down the task force interest to three main areas of concern. That was infrastructure needs, corrections officer and staff needs, and access to mental, behavioral, and physical health. The task force was really able to start moving forward when they were able to reach these core agreements. One, that a modern jail is a jail that is used less, and the current system is not working for anyone it touches. That includes corrections officers, healthcare providers, incarcerated individuals themselves, prosecutors, defense attorneys. While I was reviewing the report for this presentation today, I also found that there was a couple other core agreements that the task force made that weren't as clearly highlighted in the report. One was that they were not going to propose any unfunded mandates. We heard a lot from the counties that unfunded mandates have put them in a real financial situation. So the task force refused to do that. And their other agreement was that the state does have a role in how local jails are operating. They noted this from in the late 80s when the last time the state provided some funding for infrastructure. And also DOC as well as federal agencies use these local jails for short-term confinement and other issues. So they do have a role in that. A couple other things that we just wanted to just keep in mind. This is not a silver bullet. This is not going to solve all of the issues facing Washington jails. But the task force wanted this to be a place to step forward, a way to move forward with some of this. Also, there's a long legislative history leading up to this task force, including the Jail Standards Task Force and WISIP, Washington Institute of Public Policy. They also did a jail survey leading up to this. So you can definitely see the intention of the legislature. However, jail standards have not been implemented, and the task force felt uncomfortable using the data from WISIP because the data itself was gathered in 2023, synthesized and understood in 2024. And now in 2025, the task force was asked to use that data to decide which facilities were going to get funding and which weren't. And so they ended up not feeling comfortable with that and wanted to leave more room for local control. And we also have a host of local recommendations at the end that did come up during our conversations, but they were directed more towards local communities. None of the task force members felt like those recommendations were for the state. And so they also did not vote on them, but I think they're important conversations that we did cover that are beneficial. So to address the infrastructure needs, the task force proposed a legislative low barrier jail construction loan. The loan itself pairs state and local funding for both the planning and remodeling of facilities and implementing evidence-based programs that reduce the need for jails long-term. It prioritizes health and safety at the facility, including HVAC, plumbing, fire safety concerns, and allows for reconfiguration. One thing we heard throughout this process is that communities need different things. And while one community wants to have all modular designs, another community is really struggling from lack of isolated cells or single cells. So we wanted this construction loan to have that flexibility so that a community can use it in the way it wants. There is also notes about local loan forgiveness to communities who choose to go this route. And it also does not inflict a mandate on any new facilities. The hope with this loan is that by using state funding to alleviate some of the financial burden of medical equipment, space for providing those services, service delivery in general, that local communities, if they do really want to build a new facility, can use their local funds to build that, but not mandating it. The other part about this is that it's not increasing the jail footprint. So while it allows for a reconfiguration, they don't want the jails to expand. The next recommendation was to establish a jail oversight agency. The agency itself is able to create standards. It prioritizes and emphasizes humane treatment of people and must be completely fully funded by the legislature so that it can remain completely impartial to the jails that it is overseeing. To start addressing some of the staff needs and concerns, the first proposal that the task force put together is about transitioning COs off of the PERS retirement system and onto a system that either mirrors LEF or switching them onto LEF, which is the retirement system for police officers as well as firefighters. It's a hope that we can reduce recidivism and help people to see corrections as a career rather than a stepping stone becoming a deputy on the police force. The bridge program to Medicaid is addressing the lack of insurance benefits from that earlier retirement age till 65 when they would be eligible for Medicaid, just to protect the officers during that time. The next one is Department of Corrections Bridge Certificate Program. So DOC and the CJTC, they have separate training programs, and the hope, again, to reiterate that corrections is seen as a career rather than just a stepping stone. And this could provide more career mobility for those officers to move back and forth in the systems if they would like to. And then our final two recommendations are about a jail innovation hub. This would be a statewide technical assistance center that could help spread evidence-based practices, investigate potential new practices, provide additional training and consulting to jail administrators, provide new technologies, and partner with universities and colleges. Expand telehealth in jails. Telehealth, it can be used to address some of the space constraints for outside providers that some jails and facilities are currently facing. However, the task force really stressed that telehealth should be used to expand availability of services rather than to replace in-person services. And then, as I mentioned before, we had a lot of conversations about staffing models, and we heard from a lot of communities about how they address seniority issues, but ultimately we decided that is a single facility decision. Expand opportunities for formerly incarcerated individuals, that's the same. Public university collaboration, expanding peer support services, leveraging the Medicaid 1115 waiver program and working with communities to expand that, ensuring continuity of health insurance for the entire duration of the jail stay. This recommendation is a little bit different. It is a part of a larger conversation about health insurance and the availability of health insurance for all Washingtonians. But again, it could not have been a viable recommendation to the legislature. And we also had a whole host of proposals on pretrial services, diversion, and reentry. But with our time constraints and the vast amount of topics we were asked to talk about, those just weren't a part of the boiling down of topics that we worked on. Now we'll have a discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, yes. Jose, go ahead.
Jose, go ahead. Hey, Leah, are the mics on?
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really interested in a lot of what you're saying today. And Island County is currently in the process of attempting to stand up a new facility here in Island County, which really is going to be focused around treatment-based philosophy because of what we deal with in population these days. You spoke a little bit about, construction loans and how that's looking, but not for expansion. But we've identified here, because we are a grossly undersized facility and have been for years, that we do need to build a larger facility for capacity purposes. Will we still be applicable for something like that in the future if we want to try and look at those loan options?
Under this proposal, the task force was really adamant about not expanding. In theory, and the hope of this is that this loan option would be able to help you currently in your current facility. And the alleviation of the healthcare cost, medical equipment costs that you're currently experiencing, that could be paid for by the state. That's the hope. But we'll have to see if the legislature would implement it.
Yeah, because a lot of these older facilities, like mine, for example, is very poorly designed. It does not provide any opportunity for direct supervision. There's no amount of reconstruction where we could create a better mental health or medical, type of floor or area within our facility because of the infrastructure. So we're very limited in what we can do here. And currently our facility has brought in, all the type of programs that this group would want to see, whether it's reentry, diversion, transitional services for reentry. We're doing all of those things now, SUD, MAP programs, like all of it, even an RSAP program. I think we're only one of 2 agencies in the state that actually runs a residential treatment program within the facility that's a cohort group. So we're doing all those things, but we are just so handicapped by the ability to make any infrastructure change to do more with what we have, because we just don't have the room to do it.
Yeah, and I think, it's important to note here too, Jose, that these were recommendations to the legislature and they haven't taken them up yet. Last session was a short session. This goes to Don's question too about next steps. So we've been in contact with the various legislative committees and distributed the report and encouraged them to take it up. But this is also an opportunity, if you see something in the report to bring it to the legislature. Our experience has been that the committees are fairly responsive to constituents, and they do have the report. And so if there are things that you or Don or others would like to see moved forward in terms of a policy enacted in the long session next year, I think starting now or in the fall is a good place to put that out there.
Thank you. That's great. And I look forward to working with you all on this. So thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia or Melissa, after this task force, was there anything that the task force found that they weren't expecting, or something that was just, I don't know, came out of nowhere, or just learned something new that they hadn't heard before?
I think everybody learned a lot. With these task force, the legislature does try to really get a bunch of different people from different areas that sometimes are really siloed. I would say the most surprising part, I guess, to us was that there's a bigger difference between rural and urban instead of Eastern and Western, because that was kind of our assumption, was that Eastern and Western Eastern Washington and Western Washington were going to be really different, but that rural urban divide was much wider.
Yeah, and I would say just to add on to that, in a lot of the work that we do, it's statewide, and so we're pulling people from all over. And what we often find is that folks have more in common than they think they do. And so this rural-urban divide was pretty clear, I think, early on. But it was something that wasn't evident until you got folks in the room. And we see that with a lot of our collaborative forums. And the lesson here is that once you get people in a room and talking to each other, they can do a lot together, and they start to find out that they have a lot of common ground or things in common, and that helps with this work. And I think Melissa and the team that worked on this, they did a great job of bringing folks together and bringing them to consensus and helping them uncover that common ground to make these recommendations.
Excellent. Yes, I was going to ask about, so, what are the positive things that came out of bringing all these folks together? And was an action plan discussed on how do we move forward on these recommendations, if at all?
We did discuss it a couple of times, and I do see David is here. David was on the task force. And where we are at right now is that we are planning on doing, now that the short session is over, we are planning to do a virtual event with some legislators. The legislators who are on the task force are helping us connect with people in Olympia, but we don't have a detailed next steps plan.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh,
Tracy, you're muted.
Oh, thanks. I know there, Rick Bishop from WASPIC is on. I know he had some questions. I imagine maybe the presentation answered his question. Rick, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here. The questions were answered. We'll be working with the committees in the off session. I am concerned about the, Jose brought it up in his comments in there that, and I've been about the no expansion. There are some communities who need to address these facilities that are 45 years old. So we need to, as I've traveled around the state and looked at different jails, I don't know that a blanket policy is the way to go. It may be a community by community approach, and definitely something we should look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
And so, I would add to that again that the report, it came out of the task force, but if there are things that, you have questions about, we obviously will answer those questions, but, we think of this as a starting point for a discussion with the legislature, right? And so, if you have areas identified for expansion or things like that, taking this report and using it as a starting point, it's not meant to be the final conversation because it's not legislation, but it's meant to be, again, an entry or a starting point to come together with legislators.
yeah, and the report also serves as a place so that you can have an idea of where different parties may stand on the different issues. We allowed the task force during voting to be support, oppose. There's also an abstain if they felt that they did not have the correct information to vote on it, or some felt like it was outside of the scope. And then we also had an option for needs further discussion.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anybody else that has anything for the good of the order? Right. Well, I'd like to thank our speakers, Julia Corboni and Melissa Gerbach from the William D. Ruckelhaus Center. This has been a great presentation, and this was a good opportunity for people to collaborate and talk about things that are concerning the jails around the state. So I think this is a good start. I appreciate everybody joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you next month at the next learning event. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.